A lot of us are good. Okay, thank you. Here's the agenda for today. We have a lot of action going on in the last couple of months. We've had a lot of fish caught, a lot of work being done. And we're going to talk a little bit about fishing stories, talk about the lagoon guides and the clinics. We have a fundraising slide to give you a picture of where we are. We have an upcoming annual banquet, which is extremely important for CCA Georgia overall. And then finally, we get to the reason why you're all here is to listen to Captain Garrett Ross, and he's got a real hands-on type of presentation today. You're going to find it real interesting. So this is your time to talk about some of the experiences you've had the last month in fish stories. Anybody have a fish story that they want to tell? Anybody catch a fish? Yes, you caught 2 fish. Would you like to tell us what?
My son was visiting from Denver, and we made 2 casts into the lagoon, and we caught 2 reds. And then each other.
Really? What lagoon did you catch him in? I was expecting that to cover in a different way. I like a guy who's direct. Okay. What kind of bait did you use? Cut mullet? Oh, okay. Anybody else? Well, we had a couple of other things happening. Rick, would you like to talk about this?
There was a bass fishing tournament, not last weekend, but the weekend before. There were 26 guys in this tournament. And so there were 13 teams of 2. The numbers on the left column are the poundage of their top 5 fish. Their numbers on the right column are the total number of fish they caught for the day. So if you look at the second column up there, the guy who came in second place, the top 5 fish weighed 20 pounds, but that day he caught 44 pounds worth of fish. Okay, they started fishing at 6:30 in the morning. They got done at 5 o'clock. Totally, they caught almost 300 pounds of bass that day. The 26 of these guys. They've been doing this every year. The biggest one they caught was an 8.75 pound bass. And basically they were averaging 22 pounds of fish per guy for the day.
No women fishing?
And they were, as a group, they were averaging about 30 pounds of bass per hour.
Wow.
So our ponds are in fantastic condition.
What lagoon was it? Do you know?
It was lagoon 1 through 151.
Where was the weighing station?
What these guys do is they all have a scale. They all take pictures of each fish on their cell phone, send it to one guy, and they kept none of these fish. All these fish got put back in. These are all island guys, and they do it every year and have a great time. But I got to tell you, that's a lot of fish in a short period of time. That was done on a Saturday. Way more than half of the fish were caught prior to noon. Way more than half.
Where was the moon at noon time?
The moon was in the sky. I don't know. They had a good time.
Michael. Hey guys, let's let Mr. Welch tell us, or Dr. Welch.
We caught a nice flounder, some Brazilian snapper, 2 trigger fish, parts of trigger fish, because we also ran into some big sharks. These are about 6 to 7 feet long, 150 to 200 pounds. They gave us, a lot of fight, but they were all obviously cut off. We didn't bring them onto the boat with normal weight as far as measurement. But the weather was great, as you can see, the seas were calm.
How far out were you?
About 40 miles.
40 miles? Okay. We had a little thing that we do here called electrofishing, and that was conducted also within the last few weeks. Jeff?
Yeah.
Can you please share with us?
Yeah, we do electric fishing, and, based on electric fishing, we decide, where we're gonna stop. And we do spend a lot of time managing the lagoons and, to back up, the prior guest, comment about our lagoons are doing really well. So you have to look at those pictures, that's just fantastic. The one down in the lower left-hand corner, that's a 9.3 pound bass. That's great for a lot of lagoons and lakes around the country. So we're doing really well. We just stocked over 50,000 heater fish, not bass, but bluegills and shad. So that these puppies right here that you're looking at can get a little bit bigger over the year. And we haven't had a better lagoon season in them, so we're doing really well. And it's all thanks to everybody's support here at CCA. So if you can get anybody else involved in this and bring them on board, it just makes everything better.
Everybody know what electrofishing is?
I'll do it. The boat in the middle there, it has little electrode rods that are hooked up to a battery, and you basically just troll around the edges of the lagoon, and it shocks the water, brings the fish up, and temporarily shocks them for only about 30 seconds. So you have to grab them with a net. You weigh them, you put them back, they're not harmed, they're fine, and everybody's happy. But it's how we decide how the health of the lagoon is going and how we decide what we're going to stop and everything else. So it's a great program. It's been doing really well for about the last 5 years, and these are the results.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, well, if you want to know where to catch fish, you can get one of our lagoon guides. There's 151 lagoons, and we've just updated it. We now have a 2023 lagoon guide, and when you go through it, you'll find it really interesting. When you say lagoon number 87, you can look in there and find out exactly where that is. You can find out if it's being fed from where, and whether it's salt water or fresh water or brackish water. And if you really want one, there's a gentleman in the back room called Hal Evans. His phone number is there, as you can see on the lower left-hand corner of this slide. And just give him a call and you'll wind up with a brand new lagoon guide. All right, then also we had some bluegills and brews fly fishing clinic held on April 12th. Is Doug here? Doug Painter, did he leave? He left? Okay. Hey, Paulette, where are you? Paulette leave too? He must have known this was coming. All right. Anyway, we have this bluegills and brews fly fishing clinics that we've been holding. And well, the next one is April 12th. That's really what the message here is in a couple of days. 2 days. In 2 days. Today's the 10th. Can you say a little bit about the program?
Hey, Paula, you're great.
No, she doesn't. She's eating. But anyway, we have the clinic scheduled for April 12th between 5 and 5:30. It's going to be at Lagoon 131. Is there a limit on how many people can show up, or 12 people for this clinic? Are we sold out?
Not yet.
All right, so sign up. Paulette's in the back of the room. She'll be here at the end of the program today. And then there's a clinic scheduled for a saltwater fly fishing clinic from one of the experts that is a resident here, Dr. Bud Robertson. He's going to limit this to 10 people, and it's going to be from 9 a.m. to 12 noon on the 29th of April. So if you're interested in that, get yourself signed up for that. It's going to be fly fishing at the landing has really taken off, as most of you know.
And we said we do 12, so.
You're going to do 12 people?
Yes, sure.
You sure? Whatever. All right. And then we've rescheduled. There was supposed to be a saltwater second clinic that Robert Hales held was supposed to be this past Saturday, but due to the weather, it's been delayed to June 6th, 6th. And 2:30? June 3rd. Guess I didn't write that too well, did I? Anyway, June 3rd, and from 9 to 11:30. And then there's going to be a second one at 1:30. Is Frank? Frank is the chairman of our fundraising program, and we haven't really talked much about it this year, but Frank's been the chairman for the last several years on fundraising, and you need to see this to go through it, or
No, I'll just talk from here. I think you can all hear me. I've got to get out, so I'm not part of the frame here. You may, some of you, many of you may have gotten letters requesting or soliciting dollars if you contributed before. But it's been a pleasure to fish here, and in the lagoon, I almost always catch a bass, although small one. But I would encourage you all to contribute with the things on the far right up here, the electrofishing, the seining, and all that sort of stuff, and the stocking. That is entirely dependent upon volunteers and voluntary funding. That's the only way we have money to do things. So it's easy to do. The next slide tells you how. A lot of it is done by a lot of people have contributed via PayPal. And if you got a letter from me, you got a little envelope in there with a way to send it back. Or if you're a neighbor, you can just walk across the street and give it to them. I don't have anything more, but I sure encourage you to contribute.
thanks, Frank.
Yeah.
Tom.
Okay. Thanks, Vic. Our banquet, our annual banquet and auction for CCA Georgia is coming up a week from tomorrow, the 18th of April. It's going to be held at the Palmetto Club starting at 6 p.m. How many people here are already signed up for this? Terrific, terrific. We've got almost 200 people coming. We're very excited. We just have a load of things to offer people for both the silent auction and the live auction. I'm gonna somewhere, there it is. We have on the silent auction, we've got lots of gift certificates for different restaurants in town. We've got some inshore fishing charters. Some of the people that have come and talked to us in the seminars are offering half-day fishing trips. They'll be on the silent auction. We have rods and reels and tackle equipment. We've got a golf car annual maintenance. We've got downtown hotel stays, and we have Trapper Jack giving a live alligator capture offering. He takes people out when he's ready to capture one of those and gives you a, right up front look at how that's done. On the live auction, we've got a low country boil for 30 people, a quail hunt at the Dorchester Preserve, Carefree boat trial membership, Shimano fishing trip for 4 up in Charleston. It's going to be a really, really nice half day, or full day for 4 people. We got, it's going to be a 3-hour Bull River cruise for 30 people around Skidaway Island. And we have one of our local folks doing a tarpon fishing trip. These are just a sample of some of the items that we have. So I just encourage those that haven't already signed up, go to CCA Skidaway, .org and you can get on there and sign up. We still have tables available for you. So this is our single biggest fundraising event we have for CCA Georgia here. And so if you can, it's just a great night. We have great food and great entertainment and lots of surprises. So come on down. It's a week from tomorrow at the Palmetto Club. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. There's a slide he overshot that I think is really cool. In getting prepared for this upcoming seminar, part of the table decorations are going to have, you always have a number on the table or name stand. We had these kids get together and put these wooden fish decorations together. They started out with a blank slate and they came up with all the designs that are there, and they're all, I don't know what the youngest child was and what the oldest was. The youngest was 2 and 12, 2 to 12. And, so I know the young lady that's in the lower left-hand corner, Claire, and her grandmother, Deanna. So I know them well. Anyway, I think this was really cool. These kids come together and create this, and now they're going to be presented on the table at the banquet. So touches my heart anyway. All right, now the reason why you're here. Come on up, Garrett. Garrett's been around here for 9-10 years, and he started out as a offshore fisherman and captain, and quickly moved inshore. And if some of you, and I know many of you have already fished with Captain Garrett, but he's kind of a guy that he can vary what he's doing to catch what's in the waters at the time. He's a seasonal type of mentality, and he's able to pinpoint what he's trying to find. I don't want to oversell him, but there you go.
I appreciate it.
I'm going to close this up and put the light on.
Okay.
So that they can see you better.
Garrett, that's quite the picture.
Yeah, right.
Like
Like that.
Johnny Depp, Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, I had a really cool, well, I get a bunch of cool customers, but I had one on the boat one day that was like, let your hair down. Like, how long is your hair? And I cut my hair off in October. It's growing back. But I let it out, and the wind was blowing, and then she just snapped a picture, and that was, yeah, Facebook profile for a while, you know. Oh yeah, it's been a cartoon. It's been all, yeah, people make fun of me all the time. I tell everybody I never set out to be the best fisherman around. I just want to be the guy that was fun to fish with when the fishing sucked, and that's kind of been my mentality since day one. And so far, it served me pretty well. You know, go out and we try and have a good time, and doesn't always work out. I know some of you have been with me, but it hasn't been the best fishing days, and we still make a good time of it. So I'm here to talk about spring fishing and upcoming fishing this year. This is one of my favorite times of the year. Obviously, everybody knows like fall for trout and redfish, like that's phenomenal. We get the bull red run, but in the spring is really cool because we have so many different options, right? Like we're right on the cusp of it now. The water temperature is bouncing up, high 60s, low 70s, and we've got a bunch of different stuff that's happening all at once. It's awesome. However, the downside to it is you have to be prepared for everything, right? I mean, this is the time of year that I've stumbled upon cobia in the Wilmington River. You never know when you're going to find that trash bag, triple tail, cruising down the river when you're going to beach hammock. The jacks are coming in. Schools of Spanish mackerel coming into the rivers and the sounds, like, it's hard to be prepared for everything, right? We do our best, but, unless you just have 27 rods rigged up, it's difficult to do that. So I want to kind of touch over some of the big things that I'm big into. Obviously the trout, the road trout are starting to eat. The past couple of weeks, we've caught some really big trout. I got a customer had a 27-inch, 6.5-pound trout a couple weeks ago, which is like top 3 biggest I've ever held in my hands, and we released her. That's near and dear to me. I don't know if you guys are all familiar with the Release Over 18, kind of initiative that DNR kind of put out, but they asked us to voluntarily release the big trout this time of year that are over 18 inches, and that's something that I try and do. Occasionally I have a customer that says, is it illegal? it's not. And sometimes we have to keep them. But if you can, get past that idea of, hey, let's kill this big fat trout, letting it go is much more beneficial to the population here than 2 more fillets in the freezer, right? So if you guys, that's just something I like to touch base on. While I'm on the subject of that, I want to pass these around. I tell people everything I tell you tonight is not the right way. It's just what works for me, except this. My bull red rig. This is something I came up with 6-7 years ago, and I've not gut hooked a single bull redfish in 5-6 years since using this rig. So I want to pass this around. Everybody got 2 of them. I like to pass these around. I tell people like this, we can't be friends if you go target bull reds and you don't use one like this. Like, pass that around. Be careful with this hard part. I'm going to go over that just for a second. The bull reds are coming in right now. I don't know how many people are familiar with that. I don't go target them typically this time of year because, they're in here to spawn. So for me, this is kind of an unethical time to go target those big fish because I want them to come and make all the babies and supply us for our slot redfish for the rest of the year. Redfish spawn once a year in a big spawning aggregate around a full moon. That's the way I understand it. This time of year, and that's it. They spawn one time and then they're done. So the last thing I want to do is go interrupt those fish while they're making, all of our babies for the rest of the year. But if you are going to go target them, like I plan on targeting some big black drum here in the next 2 or 3 days. I've got a client that's big into big fish, and we're going to use rigs like that. With that weight pegged on a short leader, I use a big chunk of mullet, typically is my bait of choice. Fish chokes it down. Before it can get down to the throat, it runs into that weight that doesn't move, realizes something's wrong, takes off, and catches that circle hook right in the corner of its mouth. But like I said, I've had 0 gut hooked fish in at least 5 years since using that rig. So if you can, I actually think I catch more fish using that rig than I did back when I was using long leaders and, didn't know anything about it. But that's a great rig if yes, sir.
If you're fishing at 100% salt, but predominantly salt water, is it okay if you do gut hook one? Just go ahead and cut it off the mouth.
If you do gut hook one, I mean, it happens, right? Like we're fishermen, if we didn't want to hurt fish, we wouldn't go fishing. Like the chances are you're gonna hurt fish. So yeah, I mean, if you do gut hook one, the best thing to do is to just cut it off as far down as you can. Never use a stainless steel hook. Every hook I use, is ferrous and will rust out. And then cut it as close as you can. They've done some studies with the redfish saying that using boga grips on a larger redfish will dislocate the lower jaw and has got a much higher mortality rate after putting a fish on a boga grip. Holding it vertical, the internal organs sag, and pulling hooks out are the 3 biggest leading causes of mortality in release fish. So, if you see me and I put a picture up and we've got a fish on a boga grip and that fish went home, like, that's just the way. The one exception to that would be I use a boga grip to release the big Jack Crevalle, but I never hold them up and hang them from the boga grip. It's just a release method that we use. If you do gut hook one, absolutely cut the line, and they've got a much better chance of surviving than if you try to pull that hook out. But that's just something I'm passionate about, the bull reds. That's like one of my favorite fisheries. And so I always like to really drive that one home. So sorry, there went a little rampage or tangent there, a little rant. So one of my other favorite things that's coming up, should be starting next month, is the big Jack Crevalle. I don't know how many of you guys have gone out and targeted those, but if you've ever gotten a chance to do it, it is the meanest fish. From the time it strikes the bait to the time you get it to the boat to the time you release it, it is just the angriest fish. If it was good to eat, there'd be none left because they're so much fun that, I mean, they're my favorite. And I brought kind of my method I used.
What kind of fish is that?
Jack Crevalle. They are not good to eat. I did an article with GON like 2 years ago, and the author wanted to keep one and try it. And he put in his article that he should have released it, like, in the article. So that, this guy's the guy that like tells me bear is delicious, so, I wouldn't eat one. You know, they make bonito look like white meat. They are just bloody, nasty fish, but they're my favorite to catch. And this is my favorite plug, and if you guys can find any of these online, I'll pay you for them. I can't find them. This is a Saville, stick shad that I've repainted like 12 times. And the floating one's a big topwater plug. And I like it because I can cast it a mile, and it's got big hooks. They don't bend. These jacks have the crushers in their mouth. They'll flatten like a Zara spook. They'll just flatten your treble hooks. Like you won't catch one of a Zara spook because their jaws will just crush it. But that is this is another one. If you don't believe me that they're strong, the wire pulled out. That was on the first fish that I hooked on that lure. But that's my favorite lure. Like I said, I just spray paint it whenever the teeth marks get too far down. But that is the Saville, stick shad, floating stick shad. And they don't take them as far as I can find them. They did a couple years ago. I bought the last 3 I could find on eBay, and I can't find them. So if you do run across any, buy them all.
Oh, you sight fishing then?
So yeah, so
You see the.
yeah, so Jack's, you gotta have a pretty calm day. But I'll catch them anywhere from, you know, the Sheridan Hotel on Wilmington River, all the way through Wausau. Savannah River from Elba Island out in front of Titan. You know, that's kind of the big loop, right? But they're one really interesting thing that I've kind of found with these fish is that if you're going to go target them in like the Savannah River, on low tide, the fish will be further up the river. On high tide, they'll be closer to the ocean. And I figured out what's happening is they ambush the menhaden schools, right? And when the current's flowing out of the river, even at 2 or 3 miles an hour, like when it's just screaming, those fish just swim right up the river. They run into more menhaden that are getting washed out of the river if they go against the current than they do going with the current. So it's really counterintuitive, right? Like high water, they're out in the ocean. Low water, they're way further up the river.
Just looking for that fin that's.
It looked like a
lot of that sickle type.
Well, yeah, but from a distance, it looked like a school of menhaden with no popping. If you just see that kind of ripple on the water, you're like, oh, that must be menhaden. I mean, I stop and look at every single one. Any kind of V, or a lot of times crab traps fool us because as you're going by the river, you know, those crab traps and that heavy current will have that little V. That's what a single or a 2 fish little school will look like. Just that little V going through the water. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, slide front, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You gave us an area, now that, casting and retrieving the trolling.
No, that's all casting and retrieving, and I'm convinced these fish will hit anything. I mean, I think they'll eat anything. One of my plans this spring is to take a craft like foam banana and run a wire through it and catch a jack on a banana. Just, you know, I think that'd be funny. Yeah. But that, like, I think they'll eat anything. But they'll willingly eat topwater, so why not throw topwater out, right? It's one of the few fish that I think is almost a better technique to use topwater than it is like a subsurface or a live bait technique on. So, I mean, I see guys out there throwing mullet and they throw menhaden into the schools and they catch fish. But if they'll eat a topwater, why not? You know, why rob yourself of that explosive bite, you know, by using something different?
Do these jacks, do they, like hang out in Spanish or are they?
No, they're totally separate. I think they would eat the Spanish.
Okay, really?
Yeah, I don't think they get along with much else. Yeah, I mean, I've seen them chasing big white shrimp in the Savannah River before. I mean, I think they'll eat anything they can fit in their mouths. And we caught some last year that were breaking 40 pounds. Big ones. I bought a 14 weight fly rod because I'm dying to get one on a fly rod, and I haven't had the right client with me yet. I had one guy that was, yeah. I mean, I want to break it in. I bought a brand new rod, and I had one opportunity at him last year. I had a guy that wanted to fly a fish for him all day, and for whatever reason, those fish just would not eat. It was one of those days we got, I mean, from me to the table away from them, we were just cane pulling them, and they wouldn't eat the lures. They wouldn't eat the flies, they wouldn't eat the lures, they wouldn't eat live bait. They just were not going to eat that day, which is unusual for jacks because normally if you can see them, they'll eat. You know, that's unusual. Yes, ma'am. What's that?
What kind of ticket do you use on that part?
I haven't caught one on it yet, so I'm not willing to speculate. I'm going pretty big though. I'm using on my spinning rods, I'm using 60 to 80 pound leader because their tails are very sharp. So I'm more worried about getting tail cut. So I'll probably put some kind of shock leader on the fly rod when I do actually get an opportunity to cast at one. But yeah, jacks are fun. And most of you who own boats have probably driven right by them and not realized it. It's one of those things that once you see it, everything looks like them and you won't unsee it. You know, once you're driving down the river and you're like, oh, that's them. Then for the rest of your life, everything out there looks like a jack. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, so moving on. I brought this too, just because occasionally we do get lucky. And this is my favorite cobia rig. I've managed to catch 3 cobia inshore in 9 years. So I'm not saying it's something that like I'd feel confident going out and targeting them, but I always have some S-Pro bucktail jigs and a big rod on the boat in the spring. And I like using, one of the main reasons I brought this is I like using rods and reels that are good for everything. I carry one big rod at the start of the spring on my boat, and it's good for bull reds, for jacks, for cobia, you know, anything unusual that while we're running from redfish or trout drop to flounder hole or something like that, I always have a big rod. This is also my tarpon rod and my offshore cobia jigging rod, and you know, it's just a good quality do-it-all kind of rig. But I brought this just to kind of show, like, I mean, I'll cut this off and have that jack plug rigged up in 25 seconds, you know, if we run across jacks, you know, in transit. So it's always good this time of year to carry a big rod. I learned that the hard way a few times when it's springtime and I'm running, and I'm like, oh, look at those big fish, and I have nothing to throw at them. So this time of year, I've always got at least one big rod.
What's the length?
I think that's a 7.5 foot. This is an 8 foot.
Yeah.
8 foot. Most of them I like 7.5, you know, 7 foot 10. I like the longer rods, especially with the tarpon. You know, and a little bit more casting distance for that stuff, for the jacks and the fish that you do get to sight fish for. This is usually a pretty popular thing that I show people, and people love this. This is the rig that I've gone to instead of using the Billy Bays and the Harper Super Strikers, and all great corks. They're all great, you know, popping corks. They work, but this is $1.80. And I buy them in bulk, and they don't tangle, and I can see them a lot farther than I can any of the popping corks. So this is something that's pretty cool. And also the hook keep, or the cork stop that I use, are the compression beads, not the strings. A lot of guys like me get really frustrated with those strings that you tighten up, and then they're wrapping around your eye guides all day, and they're getting loose, and then, you know, oh man, I didn't do it right and it fell through, and now I got to re-rig my whole dang thing. This rubber bead's not going anywhere. So these are really cool. Something that a lot of people haven't, you know, really thought about using.
You said rubber bead?
Yes, sir. I'll got one of them around. So those are what I use for my cork stops. Make sure that's passed around. I don't know, a lot of you have probably seen those before, but that's all I use. They don't get hung up, they don't get caught. My line doesn't get wrapped in the inside of them. You know, they don't get wrapped around my eye guides, and I just have much better luck. And for me, fishing 7 days a week, those last me 3 to 5 days, you know, so of full use. So for a weekend guy, you know, you could put one of those on and possibly not change it the whole season. You know, once they're on there, good. But that's this is pretty much my standard rig, adjustable depth cork rod. It's what I'm sure most people are pretty familiar with. I just like the bigger, cheaper corks because, you know, when we lose one, I don't feel like I have to go swimming to get it. You know, and as we know, fishing tackle has gotten expensive, right? So I order those from a website called floatsunlimited.com. And it looks like, you know, Al Gore made this website when, you know, the internet first came out. The pictures are not great. It's not easily navigable, but, the corks, those are, high-rise corks is what they call them, and they're my favorite. They're unweighted and they're durable. And they're really good. They're the best corks I've found so far. Yes, ma'am. So that is a bead that goes on your line that adjusts your depth. So your cork slides up the line so that I can take this rig and I can fish in 1 feet of water or 2 feet of water or 30 feet of water. So it's got this bead on it. The rubber bead that being passed around. It's on the line here, and the cork slides up until it hits that bead, and that's the set of bead we're fishing. Right now, I'm fishing for 4 feet or so, but I can adjust it, you know, all the way down where that base is going to just be kind of floating around on its own underneath somewhere in a foot of water, where I can deep it way up and fish for trout in the deep riverbed at 20 feet of water. So this is just a good all-purpose rig to have, and that bead there goes in the eye guys, no problem, cats, no problem. Oh yeah, we go all the way through. The only issue I ever have with it is sometimes if you don't reel with tension, your line will get looped underneath the bead, and that's kind of a pain in the butt. That's usually when you're fishing 15, 20 feet, you know, which is not always the easiest to do anyway. So yeah, those rubber beads are really cool. They've made a big difference since I started using them. Yes, sir.
You're a guy, you fish every day, 7 days a week, and you've got clients and whatnot. If you were fishing by yourself, would you still use a bobber? Or would you just put the bait on the bottom and go by feel?
No, I would, if I'm fishing by myself, I've probably got a fly rod or very minimum artificial. Because I don't really, I do it for work, right? I still get excited. I love it when my clients catch fish. The last thing I want to do is go drown a shrimp on my day off. So I want to go do something different. I'll spend all day targeting a fish that I'm probably not going to catch on my day off because I can. You know, there's no pressure. I'm not worried about pleasing anybody, so I don't mind doing something different. But I think the bobber rig covers water effectively more than any other technique. And I use that a lot of times, even on a fun day with my wife and kids. We'll cork fish, we'll find a school of trout or find where the redfish are hanging out, and then I'll grab my artificial rod and start playing with the artificials. It's a great way to just cover a lot of water. And that's the name of the game. You know, a lot of times with me, I don't have a fishing spot. I've got an area I fish. So I'll start at one end of a bank, have 4 people with their corks spread out. I use the trolling motor and we do what I call power drifting, where I'm trying to keep the boat drifting the same distance off the bank, the same speed as their corks. So we can just cover banks for 300-400 yards sometimes in a line, drifting corks until, and I'll vary their depths. I'll have a couple people shallow, a couple people out off the bank deeper, try to put a pattern to the fish. And then when we get them, then I spot lock my trolling motor, set everybody's depths the same, and then we pound them. And then the fish move on after 10 minutes like they do here, and we go cover in more water again. And sometimes you'll pick away 1, 2, 3 fish in an area, and we'll get to the end of it, and I'll say, well, let's do that again. That was productive enough. Then I'll take the motor, drive back up to the top, and do it sometimes 3 or 4 times on a drift. Like Savannah River jetties is a prime example where you'll see me doing the, you know, Daytona 500 on the Savannah River jetties some days. You know, we'll pick up a flounder or a redfish every drift, and we'll just keep doing it repeatedly until we've caught enough fish. Yes, sir.
When you're fishing with the current, do you fling it out past the current and pull it against the current, or do you put it in and let the current?
With an artificial rod?
With the flow?
With the float, it doesn't matter as much. I typically, if it's one person on a boat, up current, because you're going to maximize the distance on your drift. Sometimes you're in a situation where the redfish are kind of shallow, and the more splashes and the more casts you make, the more likely you are to spook them. So if you can do a drift that's 30, 40 yards long, you've got a better chance of catching a fish than if you're casting behind the boat down current. You're not gonna be able to drift nearly as far and then keep doing it again and again and again. So a lot of times I'll cast up current and let it drift all the way down, and you're covering more water going up current. Now, when you're fishing an artificial lure, like my favorite, these paddle tail swimmers. And here's another little thing for you guys. I promise I'm not cheap. I buy really nice stuff, but I use what works, and I use what I like. So I found that with our bait here, I go to the freshwater section at Bass Pro Shop and buy the freshwater paddle tails. It's a little bit narrower profile, and they seem to work better to me. I like the white a lot, but if I'm using a soft plastic, paddle tail, most of the time I bought it from the freshwater section. Yes, sir.
Size of the jig head you have.
This is a 3/8 ounce stand up, and that's because I was using it for redfish. This is kind of a general purpose. You can still catch trout with this, but when you're targeting the redfish, it stands kind of straight up and down, and I'm popping this one off the bottom. So this is one that I use mostly for redfish, but it works for trout. I mean, I don't think trout really care if you're using a redfish style jig head. But what I tell people is if I'm going out, and I'm fishing for redfish, and I'll cast out, let it hit the bottom, and with slack in my line, I'm just doing a pop, and I'll reel a little bit of slack. And it's usually when you lift it up on that next set is when you get the bite. I think the fluttering up gets their attention, it flutters down, and the redfish will come look at it like, what was that? And when you go to move it again, is usually when they pounce on it. So, I'm usually doing pop, 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 and then let it sit and hit the bottom again. Pop, 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 just making it sporadic, looking like a wounded fish just flopping off the bottom. Whereas when I'm trout fishing, I'm trying to figure out kind of what depth those trout are sitting at. And then I'm just doing a slow retrieve, just real slow, real steady, and letting them just inhale it. And then I just speed up my retrieve when they bite. I don't set the hook on a trout. If I know it's a trout, I don't set the hook on them. I just retrieve even faster and lift my rod tip. But I lose so many fish from people, my customers do, from setting the hook and snatching. And, and then sometimes we get lucky and we catch one that's like by a thread. And I'm like, man, you were close, So try not to set the hook if you can. So flounder will be here any day, right? Like they're starting to show up. We caught a few of them over the past few weeks, but not enough that I'm like confident to go target flounder yet. My favorite rig is a bottom rig, slip weight with a regular #1 like trout hook, the Kale hook, and I use mud minnows and bounce them around the bottom. The jetties are probably my favorite flounder area, fishing the Savannah River jetties. Anywhere where rocks and logs and hard structure meets sand is where I have the best luck with flounder. They're not quite here enough for me to go target them yet, but it won't be long. And I brought a couple of those rigs in, and I also like this rig because I call this my bonus fish rig as well. But it's nothing more than, what, a 2-foot leader, my Kale hook, and then this is a 1 ounce, egg sinker that slides. Oftentimes when I'm fishing like by myself, or I've got one client on the boat and we're drifting corks or fishing artificials, I'll take a finger mullet or the biggest shrimp in my live well or something, a big bait, and I'll just chunk this one out behind the boat and just leave it. And some of my biggest redfish and biggest trout every year come off what I call the bonus fish rod. One that's sitting in the rod holder that we forget about while we're working an area, and I just leave it in the back rod holder with the drag set real loose, and it works. I think sometimes not having it in your hand, not messing with it, letting that fish eat, that big mullet or that big mud minnow or that giant shrimp, just chunking it out the back, it works. So if you ever get that, if you're out there by yourself, you're like, man, this is slow, I'm gonna eat a sandwich, throw one out the back and just leave it, forget it's there. And that's one of my secret big redfish, big trout, it's just luck. Just getting luck. Yeah, basically, yes, sir. Yeah, I don't have a bead, I don't have it pegged. I like it free, free on the line so that when a fish grabs it, it can just take off and doesn't feel you on there. Oh, one thing I want to talk about is if you guys are going out this is my, I'll leave this one here so we don't dump it everywhere. I carry a general tackle box, right? Like I know guys that have 17 compartments full of stuff in their boats, you know, if you could put another shelf in their boat, they'd have it. This is all I use. Like this is 90% of my fishing. There's various size weights, beads, swivels, cork stops, and hooks. Right? Keep it simple. You know, that is one of my biggest things I think is people overcomplicate this. They get so into, you know, 3D printing bobbers and, you know, this lure, you know, quacks like a duck. And I don't get into all that stuff. You know, I think keeping it simple, presenting a bait as naturally as possible. And that's keeping it simple works. Yeah. Another thing, I don't know, a lot of you guys probably have kids and grandkids and stuff like that. The whiting bite is on fire right now. It's not something I love making people happy. I like happy clients. So if you hire me and you want to go whiting fish for 8 hours, I'm going to put a smile on my face and I'm going to go do it. And I'll be the best darn whiting fisherman I can be. It's not something I want to go do every day. But if you've got kids or you've got people that have never fished before, it's phenomenal. It is a lot of fun. They get the real fish in all day long. And, you know, they're delicious. They are good eating little fish. But right outside Landings Harbor is probably one of the most prolific whiting fisheries we have. Right down that bank, 20 to 30 feet of water, little piece of shrimp on a little hook. And it has started last week and it has been on fire. So keep that in mind if you're looking for something to do or kill a little time or at least put some fish in the box. It's good. Yes, sir.
Oh, I know that, again, you know, you like to go out by yourself and when you can, well, you're gonna use, you know, lures and artificial bait because it's more challenging with more, you know, real fish. To the average angler, like most of us in this doing, are we using live shrimp, dead shrimp, live mullet, dead mullet? What are we doing?
So it depends on what you're targeting, right? I think a redfish is primarily scavenger. They eat anything. I mean, I've pulled some weird stuff out of redfish bellies. So dead shrimp, you know, cut mullet, fiddler crabs, you know, parts of blue crabs. I don't think it matters. I think if you leave a bait in front of a redfish, he'll eat it eventually. A trout, however, wants to kill things. They are violent creatures, and if they can't kill it, then most of the time they're not going to eat it. Of course, there's always the exception. You know, I always have somebody to tell me, "Oh, I threw a big pink stinky shrimp out the back and caught the biggest trout I've ever seen." Yeah, it happens. You know, sometimes they get so hungry they'll do it too. But if you want to catch trout, you need something live. I'd rather use a mud minnow than a dead shrimp if I'm going for trout. And the cork rods cover a lot of water, which is going to make you more effective at catching fish. So I think, you know, learning how to use the cork rods, learning how to drift, learning how to mend your line and pulling the slack out, you know, is, you know, there's a lot to drifting a cork. It sounds simple, right? But when you're in the current, there's a lot more to it than when you're fishing a lagoon for bluegill. You know, there's a lot more to drifting the corks than there are in the lake. But it is the most effective method, in my opinion, to catch fish. Yes, sir.
Here, tell us about your boat.
My boat, my new one,
Yeah.
or the one that I had to get rid of?
No, the one you have now.
Maybe both of them.
Yeah. So I got a brand new boat last year, September of last year. I was really fortunate and had a great client that overnight became one of the biggest boat dealers around. And he called me and wanted to put me in a new boat. So we worked out a deal. I still paid a lot of money for my boat. Don't think I got it for free. I promise the payment comes out every month. But I got a brand new Sea Pro in 2020. And as they were working on it, COVID happened. And I think they might have had some fiberglass guys run the electrical. Maybe there was no quality control there. I was the last boat to get pushed out before they shut down for COVID. And I never had anything but problems for 2 years. So I was pretty disappointed. I was taking it back, getting a bunch of stuff done. And Sea Pro really went above and beyond. And they built me a brand new boat and exchanged it $0. Like, took my old one gave me a brand new one. So, so the point of that is, I spent a lot of money on a new boat. Even my new boat had problems. I don't blame Sea Pro. I think they went above and beyond to make me happy, and I think they would do that for any of you in the room. I've got a brand new 248 Sea Pro 9-foot beam, 300 Suzuki on the back, and I put deck it from every flat surface I could possibly find on that boat, and I love it. The stereo is fantastic, and I could probably wake most of you up if I drove by Skidaway. It is awesome. I love the boat, and you know, I've got nothing but good things to say about Sea Pro, because they definitely took care of me when
How
they
many
didn't have
anglers
it.
can you accommodate comfortably?
I can take up to 6 people. Legally, above that, I have to get Coast Guard inspected, and who wants to fish more than 6 people inshore? Yeah, that's not, I don't want to do that. Most of my 6-passenger trips are not like most of you guys in the room. I would not recommend doing a 6-passenger trip. It's crowded. That's a lot of people, but it works well that I'm able to take grandparents, parents, and the grandkids all at the same time. We're focusing maybe on the kids more than we are the adult anglers. That's what most of my 6-passenger trips are. So I can't accommodate up to 6, but 4 is probably the most comfortable on my boat. Now obviously there's exceptions. If we're bull red fishing or we're tarpon fishing, I don't care, because we're only going to get one bite at a time anyways. So nobody's holding on to the rods, and we're sitting them with them out in the back, and we just kind of rotate through. But if you're trying to inshore for trout and reds and keeper fish, then I don't like 6 people. Triple tail, that's another fish that's coming up here soon, hopefully. Unfortunately, last year we did not have a good fishery. Some of the best guys in the game for triple tail struck out last year or had very minimal success. And those are the guys that are spending, 10 hours a day looking for them. They're willing to put in the time, the effort. And I don't know anybody who had a great year last year. Unfortunately, with tarpon and triple tail and some of those fish, our population here is all determined by Florida's health, right? So if the fish aren't healthy enough in Florida, the population's not strong enough, we don't get the migration up our way. So need to wrap it up. All right. Yeah, anything else I missed? Sorry.
Quick question, I know we're talking about spring fishing, but tarpon, do you do tarpon trappers late summer?
I do, yeah. It's usually July is when I'll start looking for tarpon. I kind of fish the jacks and then kind of transition into tarpon. And I'm not the best tarpon guy around, but I have a lot of fun watching them, get off. Like I caught 2 last year out of 27 that bit, and I would say maybe 9 of those should have been caught fish that were angler error, but the other ones I couldn't get them blue. I couldn't get them to stay hooked. They just, I don't know. I changed hooks. I've changed everything 1,000 times, and those fish just, I don't know. They eluded me last year.
Bowing?
Oh, yeah, always bowing to the king, right? But sometimes you do everything right and the fish still win. And last year I got my butt kicked by tarpon. Yes, ma'am. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that's important. This is probably the most important thing I'm going to talk to you guys about today. This map here is better than your spot map, right? The one you buy for $40 at Bass Pro. This was put together, I think, so somewhere by Public Services and Outreach, the University of Georgia, and their Marine Extension. If you go to the Skidaway Marine Institute, they give these away for free. And when I first found this map, I was in the aquarium with my kids, found this map, I took it home, and I'm looking at some of the spots, and I was like, well, what if they have that? And some of my most secret, took me 5 years to figure out how to fish these areas they have on this map. So, there are places like, you'll look at some of the spots they have marked, and I don't know how they figured it out, because it took me 10 years to figure that stuff out. But that is phenomenal. You go in there to the aquarium, and they have one for each county in Georgia. So you can get them up and down the coast. And I can only assume that it's as inclusive down in Darien as it is, the map is for here. So yeah, remember that. Go to Skidaway Marine Institute and pick up your spot chart.
Garrett's not going away.
I'm not taking anywhere. We can talk more.
He'll be in the back of the room, and He's also going to wind up picking the winner of the raffle tonight, which will come shortly following the next speaker, which is our president of the CCA Skidaway Island chapter, Dave DeVore. Before you take, let's show Garrett a sign of appreciation. Great talk, really appreciate it.
Garrett, I've heard nothing but great things about you. Fishing and then your music, your selection of music when you're out on the water, rock and roll. It's just, it's outstanding.
Hey, I'll play some 90s rap if I get bachelorette parties. The radio go anywhere.
Oh my God. Okay, so we're a very active chapter. We do a lot of things for varied interests. This is our agenda through June, what we have planned for. Those items in red, we need volunteers for. So Paulette has Bluegills and Brews coming up on April 12th, next week. And then we have our Skidaway banquet, our 23rd annual banquet. What's that?
On the first line that says that's at the Kids Lagoon, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
It's not.
Yeah. Oh, it's not at the Kids Lagoon. Paulette, where's it going to be?
I think it's number 31. It's when we're doing, as you're coming into Deer Creek.
Okay, most of our Bluegills and Brews have been at the Kids Lagoon, but the more advanced, they're getting more advanced now. They want to go out and try other lagoons. So Paulette coordinates that effort and has done a great job. We also have some events coming up that we've not announced yet in conjunction with Rivers and Glen downtown, where we're going to have fly tying and that here on the island. So that'll be announced in the next month or so. The CCA banquet, April 18th, it's outstanding. If you're not registered for it, please consider it. It's fun. It's our 23rd annual one, and we'll gross about $75,000 in that. We'll net in the range of $40,000 to $45,000 after expenses. And that all goes toward various Coastal Resource Division of DNR projects, like the acquisition of mothballed ships and the sinking and building of artificial reefs and the development of oyster reefs. On April 29th, saltwater fly fishing clinic with Dr. Bud, right? And it should be a fun, and you're going to have Clyde Olson with you, I understand. It's great. That should be quite the event. So Clyde called me last week and he said he was fly fisherman. I said, oh, we have an introductory program, Clyde. He says, let me clear the air, Dave. I'm not a rookie. So this guy's 88 years old and a very accomplished fly fisherman, very interesting guy. In April or May sometime, we're going to have the Girl Scouts come in. We work with various kids groups here as well. We call it Introduction to Fishing Programs. This time the Girl Scouts contact us. They'll be first up this year. Then we're going to have a evening excursion with Captain Mike Neal. And it'll be either May 3rd or 4th for 30 people, wine and hors d'oeuvres. And we're just going to go out and have a fun evening. April or May 5th, we're going to have a seminar on the Dolphin Project. On the 27th, we have the annual Kids Fishing Derby. We've been doing that since 1996, a long time ago. So we've had quite a few of those. And that's where we average about 100 to 125 kids, plus parents and grandparents, lots and lots of prizes, real fun event. You can hear the squeals all the way down to the main gate. We're going to have saltwater spin casting, 2 clinics in June. That's going to be led by Robert Hale. And then on June 12th, we'll have a seminar here. We don't know who we're going to bring in yet. We're working possibly with the Coast Guard to present. They may be our presenters. Safe Shelter comes in, and this is our disadvantaged kids groups, several of them. Safe Shelter will be coming in. These kids have never been fishing before. You hand them a worm, they want no part of it. Going in, coming out, they're expert fishermen. They have more fun. They get one-on-one attention, and it's a wonderful, wonderful event, extremely rewarding. We begin our Castaway Club series that Susie Fusco heads up on June 24th. That's on a Saturday morning, once a month for 4 months. And we'll be bringing guests in either from 4-H, UGA, and that we'll have live critters for people to feel and touch, snakes, turtles, bats, all kind of things. We learn about animals that are indigenous to the area here. Then following that, we have a 1-hour basic course on fishing at the Kids Lagoon. And then we have the Salvation Army coming in. We haven't set a firm date on that yet. They'll be coming in. We need volunteers. Please join CCA. Please consider picking out one of these that you've never tried before. Might be something different you would really enjoy, might catch your interest. This will be the Bottlenose Dolphin Project with Peach Hubbard. She's presented before about the dolphins in the area and the various projects that they're involved in. And this is a picture of the Kids Fishing Derby and all of our sponsors up there. Lots of happy kids. We categorize by age group. They're winning tackle boxes that are donated by Bass Pro. And now we're going to have a drawing for a half-day trip for Captain Garrett Ross. It may be. What? Anybody else? We got any more takers here? Okay, we got some. Yes, sir.
I have two grandchildren in this area. My kids, grandchildren go down from Maryland. Safe to take them to the Kids Lagoon, or do I have to?
Please bring them. The only requirement is if you're going to be there, you have to have kids with you.
Oh, and the second one is last meeting, they talked about a tackle shop. Where they were very good about supplying or helping us get equipment. I couldn't pick up my name.
Okay.
What? River Supply and Thunderbolt. Okay, that's why I could not find it down. That's bad.
Now, the best bait at the Kids Lagoon is dog food. Okay, it's little round dog food that you buy at this place called Publix right across the street. It's refrigerated and it is outstanding. They're pellets. They're pellets. They're a soft pellet that goes on the hook quite easily. We use worms, we use crickets, we use lots of stuff. The Kids Lagoon, we have 5 feeders that go around the perimeter, and the fish are fed every day, except the week prior to the Kids Fishing Derby. We starve them. Gary, are we allowed to do that? We do it. Those fish are hungry. Don't fall in. Okay. We're still selling tickets here. I wish I could do that. Yeah. So, where does our money go? Our money goes from the chapter, stays on the island here. So it's for the residents and our guests come on here. And so we put in Jeff's organization put in over 50,000 fish in the last 2 weeks, feeder fish. And then we have Jeff Wong, who owns the Waffle House down the street. And he comes out, he's Omelet House, not Waffle House, Omelet House, and he performs a Buddhist blessing on the fish as they're put in. Go forth and propagate. And we like him to propagate a lot. Yes, sir, Mr. Jeff.
I want to talk a little bit about the Kids Lagoon, because it is one of our centerpieces for all the 126 lagoons that we have here. And it is for kids. So yes, you can bring any kids you want, and you can fish along with it as long as they're kids. And yes, dog food, it sounds a little weird, but it has to be these little pellets. And we discovered that they work better. But I've also learned, my little research, I'm sort of not in charge, but I spend a lot of time over there, that little pieces of ham work really well. So in the past, bread balls and pieces of corn, forget about that. You're not going to catch it. Go with the dog food or the ham, and you'll be good to go.
You can even use a cricket if you like.
Yeah, you can find them.
Fishing's an adventure. You never know what you're going to catch. But okay, Garrett, would you like your daughter to choose, perhaps?
Yes, I make an announcement every night. The raffle is strictly legitimate. Members of the board support the raffle. So somebody's got to win.
Go for it, man.
No, not that one, not that one. What do we got, Stan?
The last 3 numbers are
Oh, last week.
3, 6, 9.